Well, okay, I got it glued together. Definitely going to put more epoxy. I just glued it with super glue. But we'll go from the back. I'm thinking is going from the back and squishing more resin or epoxy down in here to really stiffen it up. But it is a big base. But this is a big display. Normally, if it was just going to hold the ship, I would probably just done that, a smaller base. But for this, it's not only holding that, it's going to have to hold that heavy Drydock, which I'm hoping we can just do. I'll probably end up drilling holes here and having posts come up to hold that. And the Drydock is still a hair bigger than this display. If you sit this kind of on here, and we kind of center her up, she's that big, so she's going to stick out a little hair. So the base is still smaller than the whole system, but I needed it to be big enough so it could reach that one, and I'm thinking the far end ones, and then this pair and this pair. So hopefully when they flip it over, I'm careful because these arms are not glued in, they're just sitting there. I don't know if I can get the camera, because this will be kind of doing that. Yeah, and then, yeah, so I'll be able to catch, making sure my measurements are right. And that'll kind of float up here. Well, look like it's floating, but like I said, I'm going to hit this here with a peg, here with a peg. This back half, I might even hit these two here, just to give another support, more support. I mean, yeah, it's got some weight, and that's only with 4 of them on. I'm just trying not to get posts in this part here, because if we do that, it's kind of going to be like in the way of the starship, because you'd have seems like I'm not grabbing in the center, and you definitely don't want to tilt it that way because these want to wiggle off. But if we came down here, it would be in the center of like where the ship would fly through, and I want to make it look like it could still fly through. Otherwise, what we would have to do, another way to do it, would be to bring up posts way out here to almost make them U posts. Like they come up, come over this way, and then come back down. That way you could just sit this on top. And that's another idea that still can be done that way, which is an idea. I might, just because I don't want to put so much stress on these arms. But and that's why we can't set them down on these things. These are way too fragile. These. But if I can get it out here, it'll push like that. But this is also not glued. And I think there's enough with all this strength here. Here this looks thin, but really your strength is in here. And I made sure the infills on these are almost non-existent. Like normally you print things to say plastic at like 15% infill, where I think I did this at like 30. Try to get it as low, even as possible. Yeah, I could bring a bracket, comes up, and kind of use over. Then this can rest on that bracket right here. That's the bracket, like the rod. I don't have a free open. Even a small one will work as a. I guess I don't have one that small. Yeah, and then have the rod just go across like that, and this just rests on it. And that way you can still remove it if you just want to show the ship. And then I'll have a cable where that powers this up that'll plug in, probably in that back corner there. So that's a way too. And then you should still be able to pull the U parts out, so that way they're not even in your way. And you can almost use those pockets for the U bracket to go into. But if I could get them where it's just stubby little rod that goes in there and it's epoxied to hell, it goes in fairly deep if I can, because you got to remember this is going to sit at like this type of angle. It's almost going to come in at an angle. That's my other issue. It's not like that's like this and I can go straight up like that. That's level. That's how that looks down there. And then we need a square. So a lot of its pressure is going to be like that. And over time, it might hold it, but then over time, this is, a PLA, so it can start to warp over time. I just trying to make it so you don't see anything that holds this up as much as possible. It'd be awesome if this looks like it's just floating. We'll see. Just gonna have to do some tests, but that's where we're getting at. As I ramble on further than what I want to. Be safe. We'll put you on the floor. But yeah, and then of course we have the hole that's for the post, which then will come in. Still got to do the Aztecs on the bottom of this, and that light's causing the camera to deal with light like that. But we'll put that'll line up right there. So that's where she'll sit, and then it kind of looks funny, but then you got a whole saucer out over here. And yeah, once you put her there and her there, that's what it gives us. Probably could have cheated that a little more to there. Which I still can. I can always close that hole. I'd probably come up what? Almost one of those dots up. Yeah, see, it printed this a little bigger. Ship's 18 inches. So if we kind of go off the flat edges of the thing, we're almost at 20 inches of flat, which is okay because I wanted roughly about an inch on both sides. So 9 center would be here as far as the ship. 20 center would be here. So ideally, I could probably drill another hole right there and I can just plug this up because we got a lot of puttying in here anyway, and I can just move this over. I think it should be right about there. That's where I would like it to be. Right about there. Which again, just moves it up like an inch. But I'm going to start, first I'm probably going to slam some epoxy in here. Oh, and here's the switch control side. It's all looking good. This is probably going to be the main power, like I said. This will probably turn the Enterprise lights on, and this will turn the side lights on the space dock. And then that hole there is for the power jack. All right, got some putty on the seams. I did some of the Bondo spot putty in the heavier areas where it was a little gapping a lot more. And anywhere I saw, I went over perfect plastic putty. These here were really fine, so I didn't worry about it. But yeah, she's all puttied up. We can start sanding this. But I just wanted to show you where we're at on this. a little bit. Hopefully some of the weight will set that down. Drilled a new hole for where I want the ship to be. I think that was just a little, that was put in the back of the ship just a little more back, so I just must have measured wrong. I don't know. So yeah, we'll be able to fit that in there. Got that drilled. So get this sanded, get it primer, and get it a flat black, because we just want this a flat black. And can't do any of my other holes until then. And in the back, which is really this side, I believe, yeah, we got to drill a hole for an 1/8 inch audio jack that's going to be the power to the space dock. All right, been working on wiring up the base. This is going to be the main switch for the ship, and I think it's going to turn on the lights, the marker lights on top of the dry dock. So we'll have to splice off of this, but that's okay. We can leave a bundle here where it attaches from the ship. And I think it will be this side where we'll have wires coming down for the dry dock. And then this switch, which is here, I did with the white wire, because that's the white wire, just to keep it the same, coming from the ship for the torpedo launchers. And I just made little extensions, because once I snap these in, I can't really solder them. And I just made one long power wire coming from the jack here, going this way, and then one over here. This is going to be for the main lights on the big lights on the dry dock. But the marker lights will come on when the ship lights come on. So if I don't want those big bright lights on, I can have them off. But what I did is, since this is a long wire coming out and going to these two switches, before I soldered it to this one, I just, since this wire is really nice, this wrap wire, you can just pull it, separate. So I just pulled it so there's a little bit of wire showing between the insulation here and there. Then I'll solder this to that, and then I'll just slide a piece of shrink tube right over it. And the nice thing about this is clip right in there, snap right in. So if I do have to pull them out, they will. And they're snapping right in this base nice. Like I said, I want to make a bunch of just generic bases. And all right, so that's going to be feed the ship's main power. It's going to be for the torpedoes. This is our main negative. And that's how that works. And I'll show you how, because I did a 1/8 inch connection so I can take the dry dock space dry dock off. And I wanted to use the smallest, like a little connector, just to plug them in. So I got a little 1/8 inch stereo, or in the audio world, it's called TRS, where you have tip, ring, and sleeve. And that actually allows you to run, oh, it's got a little bit of a bend to it, but actually allows you to run 2 hots and a negative. These will be your 2 hots, and there will be your ground. In the audio world, and balance, like for your headphone jacks, it'll be your left, right, and then there's your shield. But in pro audio, you have a balance cable, kind of like microphones have 3 wires, but it's one audio signal. That's because the high and low of the audio wave goes across that. And use the tip for the marker lights, and then I can use the sleeve for the main lights, and then of course, or the ring, I'm sorry, as the main lights, and then the sleeve will be the common negative. And as you can see, it gives you, there's your tip, your ring, and then there's your sleeve. and then your wires just go in there and you just crip them. Now, if it was a headphone jack, it'd be your left, right, and your shield. But we're not going to use it for a headphone jack. And then this will be the only thing you'll see sticking out from the top, and then I can just go in and plug the lights in. But if I want to remove that, I can. But so then this is ready for when the ship gets mounted. That'll be for the torpedoes. That'll go to the main ship lights. And this will be for the, which is why I kept it towards this end, for the Drydock main lights, the big lights. And this is what I love about the wrapping wire. You can use your fingernail to pretty much strip it. Let me hide this one down underneath for now. And all I'm going to do, I can try to zoom in here. That's all I'm going to do. As you can see, I just stripped a little bit of wire there. And I'll just wrap this around. I have tiny hands. Try to get as many wraps as I can. There we go. There we go. We're connected. We can solder it. And that's basically what I want to do on the main Drydock, is have a main power and negative go around, and then just have the lights jumper just like that. You don't have to run individual wiring. You can almost have like a power bus bar in a sense. There's a little burr of wire there. And you just slide this shrink tube like that, and we're good. Sorry, my hand was in the way. Okay. Now we have power coming from the jack to our first two switches. And they're sitting there ready to accept what they're going on. And this negative's going to go that way. And we'll have to make a junction for the negative for the Drydock as well. And the ship is now attached. Saucer is on. Looking good. I was using what they it's called steel, JB steel, the JB Quick steel. It doesn't really, it's not really bonded. I like that it's got a little flex to it, but it's not really bonding the metal to metal. And then I laid tape over here so I didn't get any of that black gooky stuff on the ship, and it pulled my little decal, my pennant right here off. Looks like it caught, yeah, caught a little bit of that phaser, or not phaser, but transporter emitter. That I can just touch with a little, because it just took the corner off of that. But the pennant, I lost a lot of big chunk of yellow there and a chunk of red there. But he gave me a bunch of these other sections, and they're pretty much exactly the same. So I'll just cut one of those and add it with here, and then at least it kept the difference that's back here. There's a little bit of gapping here I want to fill in there, in those two spots. We'll fix all that, and then we'll hit it with a full clear again. And the dish is permanently on too. I don't know if I showed that. It might be in another video. That's on, so that's great. So we need to, in order to get this, we need to get that base at least ready to accept this. We got a lot more work to do on the Drydock section. But here's something I came up with last night, and I think it's going to work good. Now I had to print these. I don't know if anybody knows, like this, to have a nice flat bottom. I thought about doing this, but then it would still have to build a lot of supports. Where here, I didn't really need many supports. I think there was a few here. But, of course, when you print on the bottom, you get this ugliness where it had to print detail onto the plate. Now, I printed new things here, so that's great. That's not a big deal. All this up here is fine. But here I didn't like. And then I'm also sitting here thinking, how am I going to get wires run? And it'd be great if I can get inside here. It would be my ultimate way to go. I'm like, well, since this detail, and I was just going to fill it in with putty, like really make the perfect plastic putty really runny. And it would fill in those little lines. And then lightly sand it. But then I would lose these, like there's these bars here going this way. You might not be able to see on camera. There's these details that are going. Let me zoom in on this. There's a bunch of like bars going this way. But this side, and it seems like on every other one of the sides, it was all blah and nasty. Plus, I didn't want that textured plate look. So what I did is I actually went into the slicer and actually sliced just the detail edge of all these here, and that gave me this, which is a printable detail part, which I can go and put back on and get that nice, good detail again. But then now what that does is it allows me to trench in here in order to get lights to this. We got lights going here, here, which I think I'm just going to use simple strip lighting here, in here. Then I can get that wires tucked down to here. Then here we're going to use a little bit of cob lighting. I'm not going to fill every one of these with cob lighting. A, it's going to be ridiculously too bright. And yeah, I just not into doing every one of these. So what I'm going to do is, I think 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, the 2 outer ones and 2, skip a space. Every other one, that'll be fine. 4 of those, and then 4, same down here, 4 of them. There's going to be a lot of light going on, especially if I have strip lights here, 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 and 8 cob lights between these two. And then I think I'm just going to do, because cob lights, I can't cut that small. I think the segments are bigger, but they do fit here. I'm just going to do a strip light across here, and then I'll do cob lights on these little fingers. And then what these are that detail that's on the back here. So I did the same thing. I just sliced that all off in a bamboo slicer, bamboo studio. Just moved the slice until I only got that detail. And this is that detail right there. And I'm like, I can put that on this other side. So that way I can trench again on this side and get the wiring down here, and it's all hidden. I don't have to have as much glued wire. We're going to have something jumping between this one and this one, which I can always, come down here. That's not a big deal. In real life, you might see cables like that, especially if they move. I don't know if these things are actually move. Can widen. Here you can definitely tell that they have it set up that it looks like it actually moves. But yeah, so I can put that detail right there. and hide a trench of wires. Especially if I do a negative down one way and a positive down the other, and then it can just flip-flop. Oh, good solutions. You can just slice your detail off of parts and reprint it for other things. You need to keep trucking with this, and really all I have to do is hook the power. I'm going to use a blue wire for that. Do I have extra? A whole lot of blue, and since you're only going, not sure exactly where that's going to be, so we'll leave a long one. And you can just grab it like that. And how long do I want this? Enough to kind of make it over there. I got plenty. You got a full spool. I will say somewhere about there. And blue will symbolize the Drydock circuit. So we'll hook in that wire. You know, I might actually do this. I can squeeze it. That way you can get that hook. Let's get a bigger hook. You just hook it in that little hole or notch in the switch, and that gives you a good it'll give you a better bondage. And this yellow, well, I might need a bigger one for that one. Here, strip that already. I can actually get you in here now. I like that they're nice and tight, but yeah, I can still pop them out. I can just probably be able just to poop. And these two reds together, and that'll give that switch power. Beautiful. All right, so we got all our leads ready for the actual ships and stuff to go down. I stuck that rivet down through. Took a piece of brass tubing and stuck that through, but we're going to add this piece of that I printed, and that's going to give this ship a lot more support. So I actually drilled that through so the rod would go all the way down in here, and then there's a stop in here. And then I drilled a smaller hole for the wires to come through. But this will give any of that torque from, because the saucer's heavy. So if it wants to do this, we got a lot more for this rod to go down into than just that rivet. So why I did this is so I can line this up and get this epoxy and let that sit overnight and cure really good. So we'll JB weld it and that should take care of it. And I already made sure that the 3 wires from the ship will come down through here. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I need to mix up some epoxy. Actually, we probably could do it on that, since there's a lot of surface. Because this ship is going to be very saucer heavy. That's where the main beef of the actual ship is. Plus, there's more electronics. There's resin. There's a shuttle bay in there that's resin. It's giving it some weight. Where the rest of the hull is really nothing. It's pretty just hollow and not a lot of weight in that part. So it's going to want to tip forward like most Federation ships or Star Trek ships. We'll put a little bit there, and we'll put a little bit here. Should have made sure this was. Might want to do more. But I really want to make sure this is at least. Really glued on there. Try to keep it semi away from the hole because you don't want it to clog in there. Or glue that post in there because I'm going to leave that post is going to keep me centered. Keep this block centered until we get the ship down there. Now hopefully it'll just drop right in. It's still got to slide through that rivet or that. What do you actually call those things? It's a threaded insert. Probably the best way to describe it. Let's get this whole thing, and we can be a little sloppy and come off the edge because it's not visual. Alright, let's see if we can get this to work. Let's see, what I'm going to do is try to find something heavy. I wish I had a 1, 2, 3 block. Here we go. I got a big pack of batteries. I keep forgetting I have these. Got a lot of 9 volts and AAA's in here. That'll work. Here we go. I'll just let that sit overnight. Okay. Still working on this base here. I'll tell you what this is all about in a sec. But, yep. I think the last video, or last clip, we got all the wirings ready. And what I decided to do is put a block under here to hold a lot of the weight and any of the torque that could happen from the ship. So I drilled a hole that'll fit the rod all the way down, and then a smaller hole for the wiring to come out. And then this is going to go here because then it makes this edges of the base the same height, so that way the weight of the ship can actually even sit on the whatever it sits on, a table or. But what we're doing here is I want to put a big decal. Let's get a little bit of water on here. I should just spray it on. Nothing to but to do it. Let's see if it goes. What I had to do is print a white plate because these are clear backed decals. If I would have put it right on the black, you would still see the bit of seams, and B, you wouldn't get the brilliant colors where the white would sit on top of the black. So I was like, I'll just print a little square or rectangle shaped piece out of white, and that way the decal can sit. Trying to get the bubbles out. I'm just snipping off little pieces of this. I'll
show you what I'm doing here basically.
That way the decal can actually sit.
Piece, and I can trim it down later if I need it to be shorter. And what I like to do is I like to mushroom these little
on a piece of white, which will allow the colors to still be brilliant. Kind of like the pendants on the I'm using my turtle's water bottle to spray her enclosure. It's working really good.
What I do is I go on the outside here.
So that's what I did. I printed that up, glued, epoxied that down, and now I'm putting this decal down. But I need to trim a little bit off the edge here. It's a little short on the sides here, but I just painted them black before I put it down.
Then I'm using this product here that you guys have seen me use.
But let's see if we can get rid of some of this.
You can go to www.solarres.com to find this product. And this is their hard finish doming type. Before you can actually make
should go this way probably.
Stuff or fill in little
going off an edge.
all kinds of things.
There we go.
Works as a really good glue.
Now we can get rid of all that.
For gluing fiber optics down as well because it doesn't attack the fiber.
And now I think we can chase some air bubbles off this way.
And it dries basically instantly, so I've got to let it kind of settle down towards the
there we go.
It's like molasses.
Now I tried it with a different image and it was too small and it just wasn't doing it. I took my time this time. I didn't start the camera up because I wasn't really planning on, because it's just I have to concentrate. It's hard to kind of narrate and concentrate. I mean, you think big wallpaper decals like Aztecs are bad. Try a full sheet of this. So that is looking good. I'm really happy this time. And I kind of like this image a little better too. So I thought about having it light from underneath, but when I put lights on that white plastic, it would only really glow like a strip of it, you know. It's not making the whole white plastic glow. So I was like, I don't know. You need space. Yeah, it's coming out to not too bad. Now, what we're going to do around this eventually, once it starts to settle, is we're going to take these little strips that I printed. I did a little miter on the end. And then we're going to actually take those and sit them like that. And then we'll border this whole thing with this trim work. All that will go around. And then, but I think before I put these down, I'm going to hit them with some rub and buff. I'm not sure if I'm going to do like a brassy bronze or not sure what color. Or do I just do with a, pewter or silver? I'm not sure. And then once this decal dries, I can go down here. That's where this bolt, which I already painted black, will go down to hold the ship, and then the ship will drop, rod will drop all the way down through. So once that decal dries, we'll just cut a little X in there and drop that in there, and we should be good. Well, working on the plaques that I wanted to put on the base, I started off with something like this. I just made a square and then made this trim piece up here, and then did some, little, what do they call it, fillets or whatever, to give them some different edging on the edges. And then and then in Bamboo Studios, I can do the types, and I found some Star Trek types. But actually, this is the Roman that had a little more Star Trek-y plaque kind of shapes, like with the T with the hooks down in the bottom and stuff like that. This one here didn't print out too bad, but here it is painted. And then what I had to do is find some Star Trek emblems. So like this one, I was trying to kind of semi-emulate what they have on the ships and the bridge. So that's why I went with, the Delta shield and that thing. So that's what they have on the Enterprise D. and then tried to kind of follow what they were doing. Although they had like, when the ship was actually launched and stuff like that, I didn't really want to put any of that in there. But and then I had to actually go in CAD and draw up some stars and shrink them down so I could print them and put them in the corners. I at least got them up in the top two corners, but I wanted them in the bottom two corners because the plaques on the bridge of the ship, so I'll have those stars on all four corners. This one I was able to do, but I could print things because it's bigger because this is just a tribute plaque. And then I had to find, this was a pain, to find one of these Federation symbols that I could actually print, make 3D and print. Now I got to get a application that can actually change uh, different like JPEG files or whatever to the type of files that Bamboo wants to see. But then I'm like, oh, Cura will allow you to do stuff. So I pulled it into Cura, but I tried different ones, and it's kind of like Cura works off of like, it kind of works off of like, you can use the light, say it's a black and white photo, and the main part of the drawing, let's say with this Delta shield, is black, and then the background's white. You can say the white sets back, and the black is what it raises up in 3D. And then you can set it so it has like a little backing. Sometimes it copies, especially if you have a white background. It'll, or even a solid black, it'll do it too. It'll still print like a thin, like one layer piece, but you can also go in and it's set at like 0.4. But you can set that down to 0 where it only does the raised parts. So that worked good on this. So I found a Delta shield that was either all black and with a white background or all white with a black background. That's kind of what you need when you're dealing with Cura's taking photos in 3D. So that worked easy, but this one with so much stuff, and then you had a lot of times in the planet part, it's not even really a planet. A lot of times it's a star background. You have like, say if it was all white, the stars would be white, the background's kind of black, and then you sync that away, and then those stars aren't really attached to anything. So what I kind of had to do is leave a little bit of that background, and then I just trimmed it around those leaves. But it took a while to find one that was all white with a black background or all black with a white background. Well, I found two that had the opposite, but I printed one where I had the stars lifting and tried to leave a background on it, but it didn't really print those stars because by the time you shrink the stars got so small it was probably only going to be like a dot. So the one I made where the stars I made sunk worked, and so that works. And then I just trimmed that square part off, and there's a little backing, which you kind of need for these leaves anyway, to hold them in pattern anyway. But if you trim them really close around it, and then where it's up here, got rid of it all, it works. So I finally, after like a day of trying different ones, I found one that had at least printed legibly. And then I just went and painted it with Deco Arts antique bronze. It's the same thing I did with the plaque for the what is the Botany Bay. So that gives it that nice bronze look. And of course, I'll print them in black, but some of that black will show through around the letters, so it gives you that tarnished kind of look, antiquing look. And you can see a little bit of black around the lettering, which is where you would get tarnish. And probably what I'll do is hit it with a clear, maybe put a wash on it again, just to get some more blacking around areas, and especially in here, get some more detail to pop out, and then hit it with another gloss clear or a semi gloss, probably. I think so that is good, but I think I'm ready to spray this one really quick. Okay, and I put some tape down because it wants to blow around. Go. I'm not going to turn the fans on because I'm using cracked acrylic, so shouldn't really have to. Although these metallic cracked acrylics do have an odor to it, but it's not a solvent odor. You know, it's kind of just a. I don't know how you would explain it. Now it's going to be a lot runny because a lot of times it gets these metallic, flaky paints to go through your gun, and this is a .4 millimeter, and then I think my other gun's a 3, and then those other ones are 2s for fine detail. Like this one's a 2. If you want to do real fine detail and like lines and stuff like that, more artistry kind. And this is just a 2 that's got a larger volume. And then the other one I set up to be a 3. And then this cool thing is a 4, where it gives you this, or you can plug in this as well. Take this off and put that in if you're really going to spray some stuff. These are cheapos. I really would like to spend the money on some good airbrushes, but for doing model work, this seems to be doing fine. I was doing artist stuff, like some of the amazing things I've seen people do. It would make sense, but if you clean them and eventually get better needles, like I replaced all these needles and got better ones, and probably even just a couple of the innards, just as they wear down, get used, especially starting out. You don't have to buy, expensive. I'd love to have a nice Iwata. As long as you clean them and just think of them as like surgical tools, they work fine. I might get loud because I want to. Your first coat, you kind of anything with a water-based acrylics, you want to kind of do a light coat, especially with metallics, because you're gonna have to spray. You're gonna have to be a little more on the wet side. And the thing I like about this hair dryer is it has this cool button, so you don't have to let it get too hot. It feels like, especially when you're drying off something that's printed on PLA, that's you can cool it down so it doesn't. It's not really hot. So I like that cool button. But once you get a coat or two on there, it's going to want to stick to itself, so it's not as bad. It's just your first one. It's going to hit that plastic and want to move around maybe. And doing these letters can get tricky trying to get in between, but in a sense, it also can work for your advantage because we want this to look like antique brass plaque. Another good thing about that cool button is this dryer has a temperature. When it gets too hot, it won't let itself turn back on until it cools down. So sometimes before you shut it off, if you've been running it a while with the heat, I like that you hit that cool button to cool it down first. we go through that paint already? Oh yeah, we did. Well, we might have to mix up more paint. More paint. There we go. It must have been getting really thin. I thought it was spraying a little thin as far as pigment. Oh, and I don't always have to be up above. Sometimes I find you blowing across things, they'll dry quicker. I don't know what it is. Maybe you're just blowing the moisture away that's trying to evaporate out. We're down right on it. I don't know. Sometimes I find when I get off the side and just keep moving, it dries faster. And adding that cool and keeping it moving, if you get heavier, it's like it was a little heavy here and there's a little heavy streak there where it kind of pooled and pulled away. And if you dry it too quick, it'll actually crack like a dry mud lake bed. You know, it'll kind of give you that effect where it has that cracking. So you don't want to dry them too quick sometimes, you know, especially these metallics because they'll hold their own and then it'll crack. It's not a hard thing to do if you haven't sealed it yet. Usually another coat, wet coat over it will bring it back to life. I thought that would be the last coat, but once it dries, it kind of. Because if you have something like an O, even hitting at different angles, you're not going to hit all that in between the O. All right. And a lot of times, even my last coat, I'll kind of let dry on its own, and then it self levels. But I'm going to hit this with a little bit of heat because last time I thought that was going to be the last coat, and we had to go again. There we go. I think I'm going to leave it at that because that's giving me a nice antique look with the black, a little bit of black that is showing through. And that means less work we have to do with the wash. There we go. Boy, it really comes together once you get that painted. It really starts looking like a metal plaque. Especially when you get a clear on it. It looks great.